Mr. UFO, what you got to say on World UFO Day?
Hi guys, thanks for taking my speech here. I'm coming at this from a completely different angle to you guys. Me and my family had a series of extremely close encounters here at our home 7 years ago. Before that day, I had absolutely no interest in this subject whatsoever. I was just getting on with my life. It has messed me up, and I've tried to put it to the back of my mind over the years, and I can't. It's not something I can just pretend didn't happen. And if it was just a light in the sky, that would be fantastic. I wish it was. I wish it never happened to me. But it involved my daughter, our neighbor, my son, my teenage son, who became traumatized after it. I've tried to swallow it, and I just can't put up with all the questions, no answers anymore. And so it's one of these cases where it became strange. I mean, as if the thing over my head wasn't strange enough, but it got really, really weird. And so what I wanted to say is that the people that you're talking about that have come forward, that have been relationships have been built with them, they've been approached by investigators, researchers, media. You're only scratching the surface, not even the tip of the iceberg. You've got a planet full of people who have had, I'm willing to guess, hundreds of thousands of regular individuals who have had genuine, rock solid, absolute, not crazy, totally sane, and they've had interaction with whatever these things are. Okay, so these are people which, like myself, I've decided to try to get heard, try and put my story out there, but there are millions of people probably around the world alive today that have had strange things happen that literally they're never going to talk about it because what I've found is that the stigma is extremely active. It's severe. And I've lost family members that have ridiculed me. My own father won't listen to me, even
Hi,
though it
mate.
included many people.
Hello, mate. Can I
Hello,
catch
how
up
you
with
doing?
you? Can I PM you and then we catch up and talk this through?
Yeah, sure, Jimbo. It'd be great because I tell you now, I've just been on a mission for the past, what's it been now, maybe 6, 7, 8 weeks, where I decided after my twin brother has been hounding me for over a year to put it on video and make a documentary because he's a videographer. At first, I was absolutely adamant I was not going to do that because it was such a personal, it just deeply affected all of us. So the point is, um, I've decided recently to go ahead and just say, sorry for my language, but fuck it. I don't care what people think, or so I thought.
Do you want to give
And
us a
so,
quick version of it? Is it possible to do a quick version, or is it just
yeah,
too in depth?
well, if I can, yeah, exactly. I'll try and be as brief and objective as possible. So on the first night, this was late September 2014. I went to bed about 11 o'clock. My daughter and our neighbor, her best friend at the time, she was 17. They were stood at
Do
the
you want
front
to
of the
say what city
house.
you're in, or what part of the world you're in?
Oh, yeah, sure. It's a really crappy place called Peterborough in East Anglia in England. Um, we are located literally you could literally throw a stone to where it's nothing but countryside. We're at the very border of this town, the very first set of houses. And over the back in that direction, you have Aegean PLC, which is this is stuff that I've later looked into myself and found out. I didn't know this at the time, but there is a low level radiation dump site back there. We're in between two RAF bases, which are military air bases. That's RAF Wittering and RAF Alconbury. Um, and I've got to add to this just quickly. There have been, as I've been investigating it myself, I've approached many people recently. And what shocked me, really let me down, really does, is that many of the people I've approached that, seem to be big names in ufology, they'll, take my initial email, and then when I start to explain how weird it got, they completely just blow me out. And I just thought,
Well, let me
man,
speak to that for a second because
yeah,
people like me and Joe and a lot of us that are that are speakers, you know, we get a lot of emails, and
Yeah, sure.
sometimes there just isn't anything we can do, or we can pass it on, but people have these
Mm,
really significant experiences, and they feel like we can help them or solve it or whatever, and that just isn't always the case. But with
sure.
that said, let's continue your story.
Yeah. Well, just without branching off too long, I do totally understand that. I really do. And I, even myself, I've had a number of really what I would classify as genuinely schizophrenic people contacting me. And I don't
That's the
want to
other
judge people.
downside of it. That's the other downside, because this field, it attracts crazy people. It's really sad, and we have
Yeah.
to kind of fight that too. But I'm interested in what you get to say, man. Let's hear it.
Yeah, sure. So they were outside and they saw the classic. She says, if she remember rightly, it was three balls of white light that were darting around, as she put it, dancing around in the sky, low, not very high up. Um, and she said that they were making patterns, formations, and they were stood there watching it, saying, "Oh wow, you know, that was so cool," but they didn't know what to make of it. And I questioned her just yesterday about this again because I'm actually writing the whole thing down. I've written everything down. She says that she remembers specifically that it made a triangle shape, which now I know is obviously quite regular, quite common. Um, anyway, she said that they then shot off at a huge rate of speed, just completely gone in a flash. She was going to tell me, but I was asleep. So she tells me the next day, and I thought, wow, that's cool. You know, interesting. Wow. So I can't remember, to be honest, if it was that same night or the following night, but I was up late at the time. I was working as a web designer, and I was from home, off my own back, and I was up trying to get this work done till like 4 o'clock in the morning. I was absolutely exhausted. So 4 a.m. I'm a dirty smoker, so I went out the back of the house to have a cigarette before I went up to bed, and this is where it all fucking happened, man. Um, I still get a bit shaky when I talk about it, no matter how many times I talk about it. So as I'm sitting there, um, it's an absolutely crystal clear sky night. The stars are bright, not a cloud in the sky. I remember it was really cold. And as I'm looking up, thinking, nice bright night, there's a big white flash of light, but a double flash of white light that lit up the sky. And so this all happened really quickly as your mind considers what it is, what it isn't. And I just simply thought, it's lightning. But then I thought, but it can't be because there's no humidity, there's no clouds. Why would it be lightning? Now, just as I was thinking that, there was another double flash of white light that just literally blanketed the sky. I looked directly above me, and two balls of white light literally traveling side by side as a pair. If I'm looking straight up, they were coming from behind me in that direction of travel, moving forward in front of me. It flashed again, super bright flash of light, really fast succession, and then broke off to my left, just as my daughter had said, at a speed that was just absolutely phenomenal. And what's weird about it is that as they shot off, they left like a visible trace line behind them over the roof of my house. So I've gone, what the hell? You know, I've run through the house, run out the front door. Obviously, I missed them because how fast they were going. And so I stood around there up against the car, looking around the sky, thinking, that's so cool, man. What the fuck was that? And I'll have to tell my daughter the next day that I saw what she saw too, right? So, guys, this is where I know, and you've got to understand, I know how crazy this sounds. Okay, I know how crazy this sounds, and that's the biggest problem with it, and it's why I tried to swallow it for years. So I'm at this moment. I've been out there for another 10 minutes. I know it was 4 when it happened because I looked at my phone and noted the time. So I was going to tell my daughter it was 4. Then I saw them, blah blah blah. So I come inside the house. I'm going to go to bed. I'm exhausted now. I've waited for 10 minutes. They're not coming back. Fine. Close the door, lift the handle, lock it, turn around, put on the step to go up to bed. Now, this is the moment that I was struck with what literally can only be classified as telepathy. and it was a telepathic instruction. It wasn't an image. It wasn't words. I've never heard voices in my head, never before, never since have I had anything like this happen, but it was beautiful. It was like your mind instantly recognizes it as something foreign that's come from outside of your mind into it, put into it. And in an instant, instantaneously, I recognized it as being completely out of place and bizarre and powerful. It was crystal clear, a kind of packet of information is the only way to put it. Now, my mind unraveled it. I don't know if I've lost you guys there.
No, we got you, man. We're all
still
intrigued.
listening.
We're on the edge of our
Cool.
seat over
We're
here.
here.
Cool. Sorry, I thought I'd lost you. The phone had gone funny. So this is where my mind literally had to translate it, I guess you could say, or unravel it into what was very clearly, don't close the door, go outside and look up. And it shocked me so much, and it literally stopped me in my tracks the moment that happened. And I kind of felt like my brain was scrambled looking for like what I can't even put it into words properly, because words just can't describe some things. And that's something that I wanted to mention is another reason why you're going to lose people that have very important experiences, because it takes a lot of effort and to be able to try to describe some of these things. And many people just don't have the willpower, the wish to do it, and are scared of the ridicule. So I've got to the point where I don't care anymore. It still hurts when I get disregarded or disbelieved, although I understand that, because I would struggle with it, and I still to this day can't put it into a box of understanding myself. But I can tell you it happened. So I turned around and I did exactly what it wanted me to do, whatever it is, and I opened that door. And as I stepped out of the front door and looked up, as it told me to do, the most beautiful, golden, fiery, plasma-y, huge object, very low, moved out from over the house, as if it was just sitting above the house when it did that, and just moved straight out and just stopped. I'm going to guesstimate maybe 4 or 5 meters ahead of me, 2 or 3 or 4 more meters to the right. So it was just off center to my right, up in front of me, but up. And it's difficult to guess height, because the thing was, I'm going to guess, as big as a bus would be, around about a good, kind of analogy. And the thing was, man, the thing was literally like just completely super bright, golden and white. All of the entire thing was moving with what looked like plasma, but beyond the edges of what I now have come to think of as a slightly tilted disc, or maybe a disc with the turret above and underneath. So it gave it what I remember originally saying to my girlfriend and my family was, it was like a diamond shape, a horizontal diamond shape. But actually, now coming to think about it, I don't think it was a diamond shape. I think it was just the shape of it slightly tilted, or maybe, as I say, sorry, above and below. But what was odd about it is it looked like the air around it was literally being set on fire, because it was shimmering and moving and not static. But you could tell there was a solid object that it was engulfing, if that makes sense. This thing was...
That sounds a lot like what Chris Bledsoe said in that video that I blogged about a while back with the blades of light. But please continue.
Wow. Sorry, who said that? Because I've been searching my ass for someone.
Blades of light. I'll
Yes.
DM you this video that
Wow.
Chris Bledsoe
Yes,
said it looked like what he saw. And
who's Chris Bledsoe?
He's an experiencer like you, and he described it as blades of light around the craft. And we can also go back to what Hal Putoff has been saying about the space-time bubble around these craft maybe creating this visual effect. But please continue your story.
Sure, Danny, thank you. I can't tell you how much it means to me, because I've only found one other place where this was seen, and it's just not good where that was, because it's caused all sorts of problems. Anyway, so this thing, wow, okay, so this thing moves out. I've stepped out. All of this happened in a heartbeat, okay, all at once. So I've stepped outside as it told me to do so. The thing's moved out above me as I'm looking up at it. It stops, and everything at once happens. The moment I've stepped outside, I am absolutely engulfed in static, like I've never experienced before. All of the hair on my body stood on end. And this wasn't from being freaked out, because I wasn't scared. I wasn't freaked out. I was in absolute awe and disbelief and shock and everything all at once. I literally couldn't believe my eyes. Just mind-boggling. So I've stepped out into this kind of bath of static electricity. I looked down at my left arm. I remember that because of all the hair standing on end, and realized, like, I've got my coat on. I'm not going to see it. I've got all this tingling going up and down my spine, over my scalp, as if it just felt really nice. I realized that happened, and then I realized that everything is ultra silent. You could literally hear a pin drop, and the biggest thing of all was the feeling of being observed, looked at, like deeply, overwhelmingly observed and connected. So there's too many things to find words for what happened in those moments, but to be stood under it, and something else happened, which is this. I've got to say, sorry, I've got to stop, because Lou Elizondo, I watched his podcast the other day with a guy called Kurtz from Theory of Everything. And one of the things that he said at the end, somebody asked him a question: what would the world look like if everybody on planet Earth knew what you knew and had seen what you have seen? And he pondered for a moment, and he said, I think there'd be a lot of somber feelings, and that people would turn to religion or even away from religion. And I think he hit the nail on the head because of everything else that happened after that. But anyway, I felt as if I was overwhelmingly connected, as if it knew my thoughts, as if it was literally connected to my mind. As if from the moment that it told me to don't close the door, go outside and look up, as if it hadn't disconnected. It was all very, very weird and unique. And I felt the love. And I felt a love in a way that was unusual, unnatural, too much. And it got to the point where I felt my tears welling up in my eyes. Now, all of this was happening at once, you see. So that's why it's really weird to try and just talk it through, because hit with static, tingling up my spine, over my head, feeling of love, feeling of connectedness, of overwhelming observation, and silence. As that was happening, it became awkward. And then I started to kind of snap out of my empty-headedness, because I realized, what the hell do you do? What am I supposed to think, say? How do I react? What the hell's going on? What is this thing? All of these questions start to flood your mind.
So the craft is still over your head at this point?
Yeah, it's just absolutely directly overhead. And if I had to guess a height, if you can imagine, maybe 30, it's typical stuff that I've come to know now, but maybe 30, 40 foot in diameter, a disc, possibly slightly on its side, tilted towards me. And if it were two-story houses put on top of one another, so I don't know, in terms of meters, I'm just going to guesstimate 50, 60 to 80 meters high. But that might be too much. It might not be enough. It's no more than 100 feet, because it was really low and really big. If I put my hand up with my arm outstretched, this thing would have gone way. My hand wouldn't have covered it. It was right above me. And so at this moment, I start to actually fall into a question of, is this even safe? Am I in danger? And this again, all in a flash. So I started to have a bit of a panic, like, shit, this is not normal. What do I do? Is this even dangerous? Should I even be here? What the hell's going to happen? And it felt awkward. But first of all, I forgot to say, in that awkward silence, I actually waved, because I didn't know what else to do. So I waved up, and I looked up and mouthed the word hi. I didn't know what to do, right? So that's when I started to panic, because it just felt awkward. really awkward. And so I looked to my right and I realized my door was still half ajar. I hadn't closed it behind me. And I thought to myself, because my daughter was asleep in the house and my girlfriend, who's now the mother of my child, was in the house. And I thought, shit, I need someone else to be here with me to see this. No one's ever going to believe this. And I considered, should I run inside, run up the stairs, run into the room, shake them to wake them up? I didn't want to take my eyes off it. And I also didn't want to risk, coming back down by the time I woke them up and seeing that the thing's gone. It was such a spectacular moment that I didn't want to miss a split second of it. But I also, as I say, began to start questioning whether I was in danger of any kind. So as I thought whether I should do that, I thought, no, that's not going to work. I don't want to miss it. Then I look around to my left and realize there's got to be a neighbor, surely. And this is like 4:15, 4:20 a.m. Perfect time for when most people are asleep, right? I look around, there's not a light, there's absolute silence under this thing anyway. And that's when I realized my phone is in my top left pocket. And at this moment, when I thought that, I thought I need to take a picture, I need to take a video. And at that very moment, I felt, and this is really weird, and this is something else which people don't think about, is the whole weird connected shit with these things. At that moment, I knew, I didn't just think that I might have, I knew that I'd fucked up. It felt like it was telling me that's completely inappropriate. You don't want to do that. That's how I felt, as if it was like a, what's the word, kind of the majesty of this experience, the whole uniqueness and beauty of that moment. I felt like I was being an absolute asshole to consider, oh, I know, I'll break this connection, I'll break this whole moment, and I'm just gonna, let's take a picture for the internet. But as I did think that, the thing started to move left, the very moment. Now it started to move quite slowly at first, and I actually reacted with, no, don't go. I start walking after it, under it. It starts to move faster and faster, like it's just gliding. And I would explain the way that it moved because it was almost ghostly. I would explain that it resembled if you were to put an ice hockey puck on ice and just like slowly move with it and then accelerate. It just is so smooth and incredible to watch. The thing starts moving up and I start jogging, then I'm running. I realize it's not going to stop now because it's speeding up and it starts to curve up to my right and start to go higher and higher, faster and faster and faster. So I've ran to the end of the road, round the corner. I've hit a terrace group of houses. I can't go anywhere else. And so I back up just to be able to keep my eye on it as it gets higher and higher and higher until it looks like a satellite, and then poof, gone. It's gone so far it's out of sight. So that was the initial encounter for me outside this house. And that was just the beginning of all the weird shit. I tried to be quick and brief, but it's not something I've ever been able to do really because it requires so much more. But if you like, I can just quickly, and I promise I'll do my best to just bang, bang, bang everything else.
You guys mind I just ask one question? First of all, nothing you've
said.
Yeah. First of all, this is Joe. Nothing you've said so far sounds crazy. Number two, what was the information packet? Sounds like a download. What was the information that you received that you said you unpacked?
Yeah, that was literally just the instruction, as I call it, it literally said, 9 words, don't close the door, go outside and look up.
Sorry, I missed that.
That's all right. That's one of the things that's quite depressed me since then, Joe, because I have an overwhelming feeling that I really did mess it up because lots of things since then I've considered. Yeah.
No, taking the picture, I think we all would have thought the same thing, because you always hear people do not take pictures, and they're like, why didn't you try to take a photo? And they're like, I just never thought of it. But you were thinking of it, so I think that was smart. You didn't know it was going to react like that.
Well, I've had this major problem with my daughter over the past couple of years. She's obviously young, where she's grown up with mobile phones and camera phones. You've got to remember that at the time in 2014, I don't know people's ages in the group, but I'm 43 now. I grew up without mobile phones. I remember I had the first iPhone, which was rubbish. In 2014, I had a really crappy phone. It was a Nokia C something. And I tell you, even if you took the best picture in the best lighting conditions, it would have turned out rubbish, pretty rubbish, especially by today's standards, right? I'm more than aware that taking a picture of anything at night with a phone like that in 2014, it still would have been better than nothing. But I kick myself about that for the rest of my life. And that's one of the other things that I've come to consider, is that potentially it was meant to be more than what it was. Now, whether that's something that could this is where I'm confused. Was it really a danger? Was it intending to do something nefarious? Or was it something beautiful that was intending to do something more in a positive way? I'll never know.
And that's you have no idea how impressed how impressed I am to hear that, because on face value, it's like you felt love, it was beautiful, but there's the other side. You don't know what the intent. We have no idea what the intention is. So it's like, it's really. I'm glad to hear you say that, because there are people that automatically would say, no, it was here for good. I'm convinced it's here for good, but I'm like, how do we know? We don't, Yeah.
Well, this is the thing. I only want to be as objective as I can, but a lot of this stuff, because of if you have this kind of thing happen, and some other things, happened afterwards.
Yeah, let's get into that. Actually, let's keep the story rolling, because I'm on the edge of my seat and I want to hear what happened next.
Thanks, man. Well, it's good to be able to talk about it, to be honest, and in real time as well. Okay, so how many days had passed at that point? A couple of days had gone past until. Sorry, no. I'm just trying to think. The next day, I'd stayed up, and this was the very next night. And of course, I've jumped it, haven't I? This was directly after the thing had gone off. I'm at the end of the terrace, and I come back into the house, and I'm head fucked, Joe. I mean, I'm a wreck, I knew that my girlfriend was getting up, for work. She had to be at work at 6 a.m. She was a carer, going house to house, looking after elderly people. So by the point that it had gone, I know that it was about 20 to 5. So the whole thing from beginning to end was half an hour. But you've got to include in that my chain smoking. So when I went out originally after the first balls of light went over, I'd smoked a couple of fags while I was out there, thinking it might come back. And when I gave up to come to the house, so I don't know how long from the moment it was over me to when I came back in, but I know the time I came back in was 20 to 5, because I looked at my watch. Whole thing half an hour. No missing time, nothing like that, because I can account for everything that happened. No gaps, presumably. So I was a complete wreck, and I didn't know. I couldn't sleep, obviously, and so I was waiting for her to come downstairs, and I was shitting my pants about trying to tell her. And I ended up just, when she came down to make coffee, I ended up just literally breaking down in tears, because I tried to even speak, and I couldn't get the words out. I didn't know where to begin. I couldn't make sense of it. I was in shock. And I've come to realize that I actually was in shock at that time, because it is traumatic. So I was lucky. She kind of had a smirk on her face at first, but then she saw me getting so emotional. She came over and hugged me and stopped me and just said, look, I believe in whatever's happened. And I just was so lucky that I had her to rely on, even though I knew that realistically she couldn't believe me 100%. And I don't expect anybody ever could, because it has to really happen to you directly to really fully understand it. So anyway, so she's left for work. I've laid in bed and I can barely sleep. It's taken a couple of hours. I felt excited, and it all felt really quite overwhelmingly positive at the time. So I can't remember what I did that following daytime, but I remember what I did that following night. And of course, like anyone would do, you're going to stay up, right? I stayed up, and I was trying to get her to stay up with me. She was like, oh, but I've got to get up at 6 in the morning. Call me. I'll get out of bed. I promise. Yeah, right. So this was the second night. Sorry, and I'm pacing between the front door and the back door, front door and the back door all night. And what's weird is it was around the same time. I can't remember the exact minute. I know it was roughly between 10 past to 20 past 4 in the morning. And the thing has come from not over the house, not directly at me. So it came from, if I'm at my front door looking over to my right, it was maybe 150 meters away, 100 meters away, but it came very low, moving into sight.
Hold on. Let me stop you real quick. So this is the night after you had seen the craft, and this is the second night, right?
Yeah. So.
And you went back outside, and there was another craft outside.
Yeah, basically it came back for 3 nights in a row.
Okay, all right.
But it did. Yeah, cool. It didn't come over to me or anything like that the second and third night, but it was literally in this area 3 nights in a row. So it comes over from the right-hand side, and I immediately call my girlfriend because I didn't want to. Again, I don't want to take my eyes off it. Right, I'm going to call her. I'm calling her. Wake up, wake up, wake up! And I'm watching this thing kind of floating over people's houses, and literally just lower than probably before, maybe 10, 15, 20 meters over the rooftops of 2-3 story houses. And it's just moving along. And I call her and she wakes up just about, and I'm like, you've got to come down. It's here again. It's like, oh, babe. So I'm like, fuck it. So I ran up the stairs, run into the room, try and wake her up. She's like, oh, but babe, seriously? I'm like, Jesus. I ran back downstairs just to catch it, moving up. And what's strange is it moved up into what I now, since then, I learned that's the east. And it went up to roughly the same point in the sky, did exactly the same. So it came down, curved up, and went up as high as to wherever it's gone up in the atmosphere. So the third night happens. That was all that happened that night. So the third night happens, and this time I've got my daughter awake, and I've made sure that my girlfriend gets up early rather than keeping her awake all night. I said, I'm going to stay awake. If this thing's come back, you're not missing it. And I made her stay awake for this third night. So I'm again pacing backwards and forwards because I don't know where it's going to come from. If it's going to come from the right, from the left, up above, I don't know obviously what's going to happen. And on this night, I was in the back garden and I saw it come down, this time diagonally. But it's important to realize that all 3 times it came from the same direction. In general, it came over here from the countryside, over the back of the house direction. But it moved down diagonally from high, saw it over the roof, treetops, and it just literally moved down and just stopped. I mean, it's weird how they move because it's not like, it accelerated from a slow move start the first night, but this night it's the way it just moves and just stops dead. And so I quickly run and grabbed her. She was again making coffee. Run and grab it. Quick, come and see it's there. Instantly recognizable. Can't mistake this for anything else because the light that comes from it, the brightness of it, the way it moves, everything about it is so unique that you instantly know that what you're looking at is not normal. It can't be anything other than just something completely abnormal. And so she runs out. I literally have to pick her up. She's only 5'2", and thank God she laid her eyes on it. And the moment that she did, she, like me, she just went, oh wow. She's seen it, and it's sitting there, just absolutely stationary, beautiful, like you said with the Chris guy, beautiful shards of light. That's something I've got to say, dude. There's something about the center of this particular type of object. The shards of light are coming from the center, and they're moving vertically from the center, above the top and below the bottom of it. The rest of it also seems to have shards of light from the edging but it is moving and flicking with flames. So it's very, very unique. And you couldn't even make this shit up. The way that this thing looks is absolutely incredible. And it's not even like you hear people. So when you say that this Chris guy had mentioned about this, that grabs my attention instantly. Anyway, so the moment that she's seen it and she's looking at it and she's, oh wow, it suddenly goes from 0 to moving off like a zip line. It just goes stationary to moving velocity from 0 to whatever the speed is with no kind of gap. It just boom. So it made, in total, it made a V pattern. So it comes down directly, it stops, diagonally, it stops, sits there for a moment, again, over the rooftops, about maybe 150, maybe even 200 meters away this time. It was a little bit further away than it was on the second night to the other side. So it starts to zip line up and it goes within seconds, it goes over the rooftops. So we run out the front of the house and we just capture it high in the sky as it's still heading up out of sight, up in the, again, it's kind of a southeasterly direction from here. I think it was the last week of September, roughly 22nd, 23rd, 24th, somewhere around that area. In fact, I said to my girlfriend, I wish to God I'd kept a diary if I was that kind of guy, but I never have in my life. And I kicked myself again. I kicked myself for it right now. So I was convinced that this was like, I didn't know what to make of this, obviously. That was the last time that I've ever seen that object. And so you can imagine what an idiot I feel like for not. But I've got to say, what do you do? Like, what do you do about that? How do you don't know. It's just fucked up, right?
There isn't a whole lot you can do, man. And
yeah.
So has there been any residual effects or anything after the fact, or any paranormal stuff that happened since then?
Fuck me. I'm sorry. I don't hope you don't mind me swearing, but you just really freaked me out by saying that, because
no, you can swear. Exactly, we're on Twitter. You can swear.
Cool, dude. I'm so glad you asked that, because that's exactly what got me. It went. You know, I said the first night that it filled me with an unnatural feeling of love, right? It's taken me years to think this through and work it out and try to figure out all of the possible what are all of the possibilities of the why did these things happen in the way that they did. And I've considered everything as objectively as I can, and there are two options as far as I can see it, right? Okay, three, that if you want to go really kind of in another direction. One of those options is that it induced the feeling within me, because it didn't come from me. It just didn't feel natural. Why would I have that feeling? Just suddenly it hit me like a ton of bricks, like flicking a light switch on. And so that makes me wonder if it was intentional and it was projected and I was made to feel love. And that then gives you, branches out into a bunch of questions from there. One is, why do that? Is it so that I'm manageable? That's option one. For what then? You know, nefarious. Number two, is it to make an impression on me for another purpose? And then I've recently started to go down the route of biblical stories of lights in the sky and all of that craziness. And I'm not a religious guy, never have been, but I am agnostic. And so I have to.
Well, it obviously ties into religious texts. I mean, a lot of this stuff does, and you can look at what was explained in religious texts in any religion, and this would be similar to that. So, did anything happen after that third night, or was that just the end of it?
No, unfortunately, it wasn't, because that's where it all got really negative and scary. And so, okay. So what happened next? Was this when my son was no. Okay. So what happened next was Hannah, my girlfriend, and me were in the garden one night. I'm now, it's been 7 years, so I can't remember how many days, whether it was a week afterwards, somewhere around that, I would guesstimate. But we were in the garden one night. And by the way, I didn't tell anyone. I considered calling the police. I considered even calling the military base. I decided not to because it felt personal and beautiful, but I thought I should share it, but I didn't really want it. It was a confusing time for me. So I didn't tell anyone, I didn't do anything. It was just me and my family, my daughter, my brother, and I told everyone around me that knows me personally, but nobody else. And straight away had a friend that I knew for years who laughed at me and literally took the piss. So that was my first encounter with that kind of stigma, and I regretted that highly. Anyway, so we're in the garden, we're having a cigarette before we go to bed. We're both sitting on garden chairs, which are up against our living room wall, and we're facing our back gate, fence line, sorry. And the fence at the back of our empty garden, it was at the time, has got a very thin strip of wood line, but we're literally talking 2 trees and then a road, a 40-mile-an-hour road, no stopping along that road. It must have been no later than about 11 o'clock, 11:30, 12 o'clock at night, midnight. Not very late like the other times. And as we're sitting there and we're just chatting, suddenly we suddenly feel, I mentioned that the feeling of being watched under the objects, right? That extreme level of feeling like you're being observed just dropped on us really fast, and the silence. But this time, it felt at the same time really scary, man. It felt really, just really scary. And it happened to us both at exactly the same time, because I looked at her and she looked at me at the same time, and she looked freaked out and said, babe, what the fuck, And I'm like, I just sat there, silence. Really weird. Back fence has got big gaps between the fence panels. Like the fence panels are like, I don't know, 6 inches wide, and then there's maybe 2, 3, 4 inches gap between them, right? So you can see directly out through the fence at the trees. And there are heavy, really bright street lights behind that. So everything's lit up. There's only a little bit of shadow. We have the most heaviest, again, unnatural, overly loud, overly heavy footsteps, which appeared to be intentionally scary, thud, like boom, down on both the left side and the right side. Then again, the left side and the right side stepping closer to the gaps in the fence panel towards us. She absolutely shits herself. She jumps up and says, sorry, babe, I can't. She runs inside and slams the fucking door on me, man. Leaves me in the garden. And I'm sitting there with the tingles going up my spine from fear this time, like proper hairs on the back of my neck have gone up. I recognize, obviously, this is not normal, that feeling. And that
so you
silence.
said you were hearing footsteps?
Yeah.
Okay.
There were 2 really scary, what I would classify as paranormal, as you said, residual effects, which is what's fascinating about it. I've come to different conclusions since then, but obviously it's all speculative. I'm just guessing, but it could be anything. Who knows? But anyway, these heavy footsteps, boom, boom, like something out of a nightmare. And I mean, literally nightmarish kind of feeling and sound it was making. 1, 2, another 1, 2, left and right at the same time. And then the thing, whatever it was, should have been visible and takes that last 2 steps where it's directly in front of me, behind the fence, but there's nothing visibly there. And yet the footsteps are coming from where I should see whatever's making those sounds, those steps. I don't know about you guys, but when I get freaked out, and I've had a couple of things happen where I get angry because I'm like, how dare you test me? And that's just going to stiffen my resolve. So I got angry. So as it's starting to make me more and more scared, I'm actually getting more and more angry. So I'm like gritting my teeth and come on under my breath. And nothing was there and nothing else. It just went absolute, again, pin drop silent.
And while you were hearing the footsteps, you could also see the UFO in the distance, or was it gone at that point?
No, that's a good point, because my girlfriend just recently, she said to me, why didn't we look up? Because we were so fixated on what was happening in front of us, directly in front of us, that I didn't even think to, she didn't think, I never considered, I mean, hindsight 2020, right? If it happened now, straight away, I would be ignoring that shit, and I'd be looking up at the sky, I'd be looking around for if it's hiding somewhere, because it seems like these things, they literally hide. It's really weird, man. I have come to think that it was a test, like a test, or it's just like a prank, like it's trying to see how you react, or that it maybe, I don't know, maybe it was connected and it wanted to find out how it feels, or see what really upsets me, or I don't know. It's just weird. It doesn't make any sense. Why would you do that? And what was that, right? So literally the feeling lifted as quick as it had dropped. So suddenly the fear and the silence lifts away just as quick as it had landed, and everything just feels normal again. I sit there for literally maybe 2-3 minutes, because I'm determined that I'm not taking my eye off of that gap in that fence line. And I sit there for a moment before I get the balls to stand up, walk over there, and literally jump the fence to look, like up on top of it to look over. There's nothing there. But this is Peterborough, England. We have badgers, foxes, occasional rabbit, and deer, like little deer. Like, there's nothing that would make that kind of heavy, loud. Just basically, it was nothing natural, man. That was nothing natural, and that was just so scary. So, this is what I've got to say. One thing that I did just recently is, while I've been deciding to kind of get out there what happened and fuck it, I actually asked MUFON. I found out about MUFON. So I asked MUFON, I emailed them and said, do you have anyone in the UK I want to talk to about something that happened 7 years ago? They said, yes, you can contact the director of MUFON in the UK. That guy's name is Jack Turnbull. I got his email, I can't remember if they gave me it, but he directed me to ERT, some part of MUFON that deal with certain aspects of encounters, experiences. And while I was on their website looking through the questionnaire that you're supposed to fill in, it suddenly hit me like a ton of bricks, something which I had almost forgotten. I wouldn't say I'd forgotten it, but I buried it so far and just brushed it off even myself. Even in the midst of all this weird shit that was happening, I still managed to brush stuff off and ignore it, as if, no, not going to deal with that, didn't happen. But there was one incident, and the only time I've ever had sleep paralysis, and that was literally after a few days after the initial 3 nights, and then that weird shit in the garden happened. At some point between those nights, I'd fallen asleep on the sofa by accident, and I woke up. The typical classic, what I've read up is just sleep paralysis, right? Except it's just the timing of it happening to me that's scary, because I had the distinct presence of more than one thing in the room to my left. And I remember being so scared that I couldn't dare look over to my left, because I could open my eyes, but I couldn't move. So I didn't want to look left because I was scared senseless. And I felt that there was not only something in the room, but it felt like there was more than one thing in the room. So I refused to look over, and I was just literally begging and trying to force myself to ignore it and go back to sleep. It's just sleep paralysis, blah, blah, blah. Ignore it, go back to sleep. And eventually I was able to just pass back out. Now, I've forgotten or pushed that aside. And it was only when I was filling out this form on the MUFON website that the questionnaire starts to ask you about those bits and pieces, things like sleep paralysis, sensing someone in the room. And I thought, yeah, but it's just sleep paralysis, man. But then I thought, shit, what if it isn't? Just what if, just what if? So it's something which I have to add in, because that could or may not be relevant at all to the whole thing. So then what happened is my teenage son, Corbin, who I hadn't had around me for many, many years, was 14 years old. His mother had been, like many women, caused trouble when we broke up, wouldn't let me see my kids. That's the reason I left England years ago. But I was back for them. Anyway, he came to move in with us, right? And we didn't know through all of this happening that my girlfriend Hannah was pregnant. I don't know if that has any relevance. Who knows? Probably none. But she was actually pregnant from the very first night, and she gave birth in March 17th, 2015. So that places it. So now we literally had months have gone past, right? End of September, October, November, December, January, February, March. So how does this happen, man? Because if this is residual effects, why would it go on for several months? So this was one of those major issues for me that really affects me to this day, beyond the initial signs, even almost as much as the footsteps thing in the garden. My boys moved in with me, my teenage son. We live over the back of the house, that road that I mentioned. You can walk for just 5 minutes and you pass into the countryside, as I said. And there are some woods back there, only small bits of woods, but they are, you can't see those fields and woods from any houses. It's completely isolated, right? But I used to go for walks in there all the time. I used to record natural sounds to put on SoundCloud as chill out ambient stuff to relax to. So I was always in there by myself, no problem. So I say, hey, Corbin, I'd forgotten all about the UFO stuff, but it had been so many months, right? So I go over there with him. Let's go for a walk. We do the usual route that I'd always done. And we approach the woods. And just as I'm about to step into the woods, that damn feeling of fear, being watched, fell on us just as quick as it did in the garden. All of a sudden, boom, hits me. And I stop because I recognized that I've had this happen before. I looked to my left and my son is literally stopped as well and looked up at me and said, Dad, do you feel that? I'm like, yeah, do you feel it too? He's like, yeah, whatever, I don't like it, man. And then this is really fucked up, man. That feeling of being watched here, it had a direction to it. That's the only way I can put it, because that's literally what it was. It wasn't just that I felt this time I was being observed, like somebody standing in your face, but you can't see them. This time it felt like it was coming from up to my right, up in the fucking sky. And how, I don't know, but that leads on to another bunch of questions I've got that I need answers to, man. So I immediately, as I sense that, I look up to my right and I catch out of the corner of my eye, I saw it only for literally just long enough to know that I'd seen it. Something really dark darted behind the only puffy white cloud that was in the sky. And it was a huge, big, puffy white cloud, man. But it was the only one in the whole sky, which was really weird because it was really windy and it was super cold, bright, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, by the way. Super bright blue sky, but really, really, really cold day. One puffy white cloud. And I catch this thing just jet behind it as if it was hiding. Like, like if you sense someone looking at you, or if you look over somebody and somebody's been looking at you, you know how you just catch them suddenly look away. That's how this felt. It's like I look up and the thing just suddenly, oh shit, and moves behind the cloud. So I stare at this cloud, waiting for something to come out of it from any angle, because I can see all sides of it, of course. And I'm staring and I'm waiting and I'm thinking, balloon, hot air balloon, plane, jet, could be anything at all. Why isn't it coming out the other side? You start to try and tell yourself, whatever it is, it can't be anything abnormal, even though I've already gone through it. Your brain just wants to deny everything at all costs. I'm staring at it. I said, Corbin, did you see that up there? And he said, yeah, did you see it too, Dad? I was like, what did you see? And he said it was like it looked like a can, like, what do you call it? He was trying to find the word. He's like, it was like a cylinder. So I was like, oh shit, man. So I said, come on, let's get the fuck out of here. And I look in the woods and I grab his arm and I need to just get out of there because it felt like imminent danger. It felt imminent, man. It felt the same as it did in the garden, where it just felt extremely dangerous. Like, it's not something you ever feel at that level in real life. I've had guns put to my head. I've had fights with like 6 guys on one. I'll just bring it on. Yeah, I've done crazy shit in my life, like incredible amounts of near-death experiences where I've almost died multiple times. Nothing in my life ever can hold anything towards that feeling. Is on another level entirely. Nothing comes close. So when I say that feeling of being watched and observed, this isn't like, oh, I think somebody might be watching me. No, this is actually overwhelming, undeniable, claustrophobic, almost paranormal feeling of like, shit, what the hell's going on here? Hair on the back of your neck stands up. And it makes no sense because you can't understand why would that happen. So we got out of it. And shit, guys, I forgot to mention. Oh man, I forgot to mention. There was just this one little incident that happened where I can't remember how many days after the original 3 nights. I was driving down the road and I saw a red ball of light just hanging above some power lines down the same road at the back of our house is Bretton Way, 40 miles an hour, lots of roundabouts. And there was a red ball of light just hanging over. I just glanced left. I noticed it. I double took at it and I thought, wow, cool, because I was coming up to a roundabout. And I knew that on the other side of the roundabout on the left was a car sales place. So I knew there was a little turning that I could stop and jump out. And I was determined to actually take a picture of this thing because it didn't feel like the craft over me that night, which felt so personal. So I felt, well, it's a ball of light. I'm going to get a picture of this damn thing. But my coat was off. It was on the passenger seat with my phone in my jacket pocket where I always kept it. So anyway, I've seen it, double took. Yep, that's not meant to be there. That's a ball of red light hanging above power lines at night time. And so I pulled in as quick as I could, jumped out of my door and gone around the front of the car because I kept my eye on it the whole time going, am I sure? Am I sure it is what it seems to be? And I'm like, yeah, there's no way that should be there. So I opened the passenger door, reaching in, trying to keep my eye on the damn ball of light. And as I managed to get my phone out, the thing just blinks out. It doesn't shoot off anywhere at any rate. It just literally, as if somebody shuts a door on it, like shut the camera lens, it just blinks out. That's something I forgot to mention because it happened. I think that was actually much closer to the original 3 nights before the garden thing. It was somewhere in that time zone period.
That's interesting, man. So let's go to you were the last thing that happened was you had the you saw something in the sky. You were experiencing fear and like something was watching you. Did anything happen after that?
Yeah, the very next day. The very next day, man. So that happened in broad daylight, and that worried me because that was now something black. My son said cylindrical.
Let me jump in. Actually, let me interrupt you real quick.
Yeah.
Everyone that's requesting, I'm not approving requests right now. We got a really interesting story going on, and I want to continue with this. This is an Art Bell moment for me again. So, all right, let's continue, Mr. UFO Hunter.
Thanks, man. Thank you, man. This feels actually like therapy, so I really appreciate it. Thank you. So where we at? Yeah, so we come back that day. I think my son had gone out because he was freaked out. He'd gone to his friend's house, and that ties into another really sad story actually, because that friend of his that he went to stay with that night, his little brother, who was only about 12 or 13, died later, found hanging in his bathroom shower. They say it was a prank, but who knows? That's another story, right? So he's gone out. The next day, I'm with my baby son in the house by myself. I can't remember if it was, I think it was morning. Could have been afternoon, but it was broad daylight anyway. It was very sunny, even though it was cold again. I remember it was a bright day. And my baby son, literally only a few days old, dude, I've just thought of something. My son spent 5 weeks in intensive care from birth. He's now 6 years old. So I've just thought about that. It's never really occurred to me that I can place it even closer. I know he'd been home for a few days. So that means that it wasn't the 17th of March. That means it was at least 5 weeks after the 17th of March. So now I'm okay, cool. Just realized that. Sorry. So it's in April, end of April. Shit. So my son's asleep. The baby son, he's on the sofa. I'm on the other part of the sofa, and he starts to wake up crying. For some reason, I was in a really ratty, kind of short-tempered mood that day, and I remember thinking, "Oh, fuck's sake," because I'm sorry, but I was just in a bad mood. So I stand up to go and pick my son up, and just as I went to pick him up, I caught something in the corner of my right eye that moved, that just drew my attention. So I looked to my right, which is where my kitchen and my living room doorway is. And as I've looked over, there's this something else weird happening here, guys. There's this really dark but yet slightly transparent, for want of a better description, I've heard people say shadow being, shadow person, whatever. That's the only real way to describe it. It was definitely in the form of a person, head, shoulders. Couldn't see individual arms, fingers, or anything like that because it was all so sudden and made me jump. But I've looked over, and in the doorway between the kitchen and the living room was this 3.5 to 4 foot tall. I equated it to the size of a 5 or 6 year old boy, stood in the doorway but moving slightly. And I think I made it jump, and it made me jump because it was one of those what the fuck moments. I spun around, made my heart literally skip a beat because it freaked me out so much that it was stood right there, and it just glided real fast across the room. It wasn't a shadow projected onto the wall. This was actually in a 3D space, but just a 3-dimensional fucking shadow of a small person just glided through my living room as I'm staring at it. And it made me like yelp because it was so like just shocking. It just shocked me. So I'm like literally clinging onto my chest because my heart's going nuts. And was it the next day? I think it was the next day that my son has come back. It may have been that same day, but I don't think it was. I think it was the next day. My son comes back. I haven't told him at all what's happened. And I know I was upstairs because I remember him running up the stairs going, "Dad, Dad, Dad." And he's shitting himself. And he says, "Dad, Dad, I was just in the living room doing my hair in that mirror. And behind me was this fucking shadow thing that just ran across the room." I was like, "Oh man, this wasn't just me." So whatever this thing was, it was the day after it happened for me. The thing in the sky and the danger, don't go into the woods feeling. And either that, I don't think it was that same day. I think it was the next day that he had seen the exact same thing before I'd even told him what I'd seen. Because I think I may have questioned at the time probably whether to even tell him, because he didn't handle it very well. He's only 14 years old. He's just lost his mum and his sister and brother to move in here because of problems, and he was going through a bad time. So that was that. That was everything that happened. I think. Just the
That
next
is
thing
amazing, man. That is an amazing story. Like, I can.
That was great.
Yeah, I can hear in your voice. I have no reason to doubt what you're saying, and what you're saying also fits in with a lot of other experiencers. Whether it's the blades of light or it's the paranormal stuff happening after the original experience, a lot of things fit in. What do you think, Joe?
It does. I mean, we both have tweeted out that Eric Davis says when people have close encounters, the poltergeist activity follows all the time, and the extreme fear matches up with people have experienced that skinwalker, the footsteps. Eric Davis felt like he was, he was frozen in place at skinwalker, and the telepathic voice said, "We are watching you." John Keel says he thinks this phenomena likes to mess with certain people just for the hell of it.
Right.
You had sleep paralysis. My first experience was right after reading Whitley Strieber's Communion, my first UFO book. Wake up on the couch, fell asleep, paralysis, sleep paralysis. Shit. Scared the hell out of me. And once again, the timing. It's like the first time I ever remember it was right after I started reading my first UFO book. My ex-wife used to have a shadow being stand over her bed every night when she was younger. Wow. And then you had your son have the experience before you even told him. So that's confirmation. And so, yeah, it's really... Yeah. I can relate to a lot of what you said, just because what I've learned and what some people I know have experienced and in mine. I love that you shared that with us.
Thanks,
that was some heavy stuff, man. That was some edge of your seat
question. So the only question is, what are they and what do they want? What are they doing? What's their intent? And are they, as people have said, are they ETs? Are they extra dimensional? Who knows? I don't know. Are they spirit? I don't know. But there were two other things that did happen years later, and I've come to know now since dealing with Jack Turnbull, the director for MUFON UK. There were other people in this area who literally captured on photo and on video the balls of light in this exact location, but over separate years. I caught as well what appeared to be a sphere, a metallic dark ball. Now, I've got to preface, I could be wrong, and I want to be proven wrong because I want to know if it's not a drone, and it's definitely. I don't think it was a drone, and I don't think it was a balloon for a couple of reasons. Because of the way it moved and stopped and then moved, it first came towards me. It appears completely spherical. It was in broad daylight in 2017 on the 17th of July at 11:19 a.m. while I was at work, and I captured it inside of a vehicle for 7.5 minutes, and then I got out the truck. I had to go over and do some work, but I was trying to film it without alerting anybody's attention because I've done, as I say, lots of different work, but at the time I was doing construction, and the kind of people you work with don't generally, they're not the kind of open-minded people that you'd want to say, hey, do you think that's a UFO? so I was trying to film this thing like secretly on my phone while being told, come on, we've got work to do. So I filmed 3 separate clips of this thing moving across, and it was at a power station. It looks like a ball. It didn't make any noise, and it was hanging around for a good 20 minutes, changing direction. It wasn't moving fast. I was hoping it would zip off real quick to kind of go, okay, yeah, it's one of them. But it didn't. But I caught that on camera, on video. So I can send you the videos if you like. I've just literally uploaded them onto my Twitter account, 2 of them, because the other one is 7 minutes. It won't let me put it up. I tried. And then what happened in 2018 is that I was driving down a 70-mile-an-hour road that has no hard shoulder. There's nowhere to pull over. And as I'm driving back, it's nighttime, and I look over to the right and I see 3 balls of amber light. And I initially thought, as we all know, when you see something odd, first your mind goes to what it isn't. Okay, that must be a plane. No, it's not. Can't be a plane. It's not a helicopter. It's not this. It's not that. And you quickly scroll through every possible thing until you say, what the fuck is that? So 3 balls of amber light looked like was a light aircraft about to crash over to my right, but far away. It was across a huge field, maybe good 500 meters, right? So I look over and I think, airplane crashing, it's coming to crash, it's far too low, and instead it veers up and travels 3 lights horizontal. And as it's coming towards me, I start to think, shit, the speed that I'm traveling at and the direction of its travel is going to intersect with me. So I'm thinking, right, I'm driving a truck. It's not like I should be playing with my phone. And it's nighttime, and I know that it's a grass soft verge drop off to my left. So I'm like, is it what I think it could be? Is it not? Do I try and stop? I shouldn't, because it's dangerous. A car might, all these things. The thing comes closer and closer. I can see that there's no solid object in between. I'm looking for blinking, flashing lights. There's none of those aircraft lights. And by the time it gets super close to me, I realize, fuck me, this is those 3 balls of light. But this time they're amber, silent. I've got the window down. And by the time it travels over,
You still there? I think we lost him for the time being. Let's go to other people's thoughts about this now, because Mr. UFO has become basically the guest of the show. Rainer, what do you think about his story?